What it is, y'all, it is your old boy Pilk, and I'm coming back today with more Danmachi. And today we're going to be talking about the fire team in 7th Zone. And this is going to be an interesting situation because I've talked about how I kind of feel like the fire team might be able to hold a candle to the water team. We're going to do a real, honest to goodness, real life assessment here and make some judgment calls because in some respects, I still kind of sort of agree with that. In some respects, I feel maybe not. And I will say right out of the gate, as far as an amalgam to Aisha goes, I don't unfortunately have the new Fire Haruhime. If I did, she'd be like a really, really, really good unit to drop in this team. But unfortunately, I don't have her at all. I don't have her like in any respect, level 60 or anywhere. So unfortunately, I can't really address her on this one. So when we get to doing our essays, I'll kind of address what we've got. But right out of the gate, let's just go ahead and get this started. We're going to do Dawnwind with Haruhime. I am going to float this Welf. There's a very good reason I'm going to float him. We'll discuss that here shortly. So we're going to do Spotlight with Line there. Everybody else is going to do Skill 1 with their general buff stack. And then here we go. Okay? Now, you will notice that Lily is taking some... Actually, that was Lee that took the monster damage. So... already you can kind of see a deficiency. It seems like the fire team might actually be a little weaker just defensively than the water team does. That actually makes sense because Lead is a bit older. You know, he's been around for a minute. As far as a unit goes, you know, he's over a year old, so that could be some of that. But I also have noticed that these units do hit stupid hard for no reason whatsoever. So we're going to go ahead and do Blowing Wind. That's going to give everybody... basically, it's going to give replication to all the debuffs we're about to put on here. With, normally I would do her skill 2 here, and that's kind of what we do with the water team. We give 20% all in single target damage. Number 1, I don't have any single target units on this team. Number 2, skill 2 here already does 35% AoE damage. There's a good and a bad to this, and we'll talk about that here in a bit. But for now, I'm going to do skill 1 with Winnie on this turn to give us a little bit of HP regen and things like that. That's really, apologies for that, what's really going to help us out in kind of moving on down this path. So these other two, they're going to do their skill 2, and that's going to get us a physical resistance debuff, an endurance debuff, an AoE debuff, not a fire debuff. And this is important to notate here because... Aisha and Belle, immediately on by turn 2, are already giving us physical resistance and water resistance debuffs. I have to wait for Welf to come in here, do his skill 2, just to get the fire resistance debuff. Okay? So that's a really important factoid there. I believe Mikoto also does 35%, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the two. Belle or Aisha, I can't remember which one, probably Belle, does a 40% water debuff. So we are having to use 3 units here to make up for what 2 units do on the water team. So that's already a major deficiency. Also worth noting, with the water team, we're mixed single target and AoE. Here we're all AoE, and over there, we got a 20% buff on AoE damage. Here we've got 35%. Technically it's a debuff, but it is a buff to AoE damage. So there's a lot to take in here. So in theory, if this team was stronger, they should be working a little bit faster. So bear that in mind as we move a little further on down the road here. So I'm going to go back and do Dawnwind because we need to get the 33% SI gauge charge to Welf, and Welf needs the AoE, I say debuff, but basically reduction. It's a defensive buff, for lack of a better way to put it. In fact, that is probably the way I would put it. So let's go ahead and get in here. And let's move on. Welf, I'm trying to make a video here, bro. If you'd be so kind as to not just die, I'd appreciate that. In his defense, these units hit stupid hard. Like, they hit really, really, really hard. Let me make sure he's got the right defensive utility. He's got Ontario the Jester. He's got no weapon. Why does he have no weapon? Where did his weapon go? We're going to steal that weapon back. And... see, he's got His agility is dropped, and that's about it. Maybe if we just go ahead and give him a stun anklet and just see what happens. He's a little on the speedy side, and that is kind of what concerns me about him. But at this juncture, I think we might need the defense. So 281 defense there. And do I have another level 80? I should have another level 80. Level 60, 218. I apparently do not have another level 80. Dilly Lily. So, we'll keep Ontario the Jester. It's just going to slow him down a little bit. Let's try this again. So, it is worth noting these units do hit absolutely ridiculously stupid hard. And that is a bit problematic. I'm not going to lie. That does become distinctly problematic here. Because the water team doesn't seem to have any problems with this. So, right out of the gate, you can already tell the water team is a little more hardy. They last a little bit longer in battle. And it's not like they have any buffs, do they? Okay, they do have a strength buff. It's like 15%. It's not end of the world stuff. So let's go and do HP regen, skill 2 with them. Unless I'm mistaken, I don't think they're hitting any harder. Now, we could throw the water team in here, see what happens. But, at the moment, I just don't... The fire team does not seem to be holding their own the way they kind of should. So I'm going to go back here and do Dawnwind again. I'm going to do his skill 2 to get the debuff off. Let's see. Actually, Dex, Agility, and Endurance plus 35%. We're going to do that. I'm going to do his buff, and we'll do his debuff next turn. And that's 4 turns, so I'll go ahead and rebuff. Well, actually, I don't need that. I'll do that next turn. So let's go ahead and do this. See where we get. We'll give ourselves a little bit of endurance. Endurance 35% will help out, just in a defensive standpoint. And taking AoE damage, Notice that Haruhime kind of laughed at the AoE damage, and everybody else took, a pretty substantial hit. So, it's... Even when they're guarding and countering, they're still taking insane damage. So that already just doesn't really feel well. He's going to do skill 2. She's going to do skill 2. He's going to do skill 1 and rebuff that. Let's go. And it is worth noting on this turn, and I'll go ahead and cover this here next turn. I'll show you kind of what I'm talking about. It does take until turn 4 that I finally have physical resist and magic resist all debuff. Now, the one thing with Winnie, and this is the interesting point with her, she does a 20% AoE and single target debuff, but because Dilly Lily has a 35% AoE debuff, what her debuff kind of becomes irrelevant. Now, bear in mind, this is the debuff that we actually, technically it's a buff. It's a resistance debuff, but yeah. Basically, her debuff more or less applies to all the units on the water team. But on this team, everybody's got 35%. So they have significantly more AoE damage than she would ever dish out or allow us to dish out through the debuff. So bear that in mind as we get a little further on in this match, that these units, by all means, should be hitting harder. Not to mention, I've got 2 AoE DPSs and 1 single target DPS on the water team. Here, both Wealth, Dilly Lily, and Lead are all AoE DPSs. So, in theory, we should be defeating this faster. Keep all this in the back of your mind, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do... I think we've already done Night Storm. Let's see. That's counter rate 30%. And... yeah, so we have that. So we're going to go ahead and go back to Blowing Wind. I'm going to do skill 2 with him. I'm going to do skill 1 with Dilly Lily. In fact, you know what? I'm not going to. As much as I would like that, I don't want the physical resist down. So I'm just going to continue doing her skill 2 and just move on with life. I really can't afford her debuff anymore. It's not something I look forward to, frankly. So she gives herself a self 40% debuff. So that doesn't feel great. And I didn't talk about the debuffs on the team. I'll need to go talk about them here in a moment, because when it comes to the team with Aisha and Belle, the two of them together, in fact, I believe Belle alone already does physical resistance and water resistance debuffing. Welf does water resistance debuffing. Philly Lily does AoE debuffing. And Lead does a physical resistance debuff 35%. So technically we need 2 units, sometimes 3, to just pull off what 1 or 2 will do on the water team. So that's already another major deficit in the face of this, everything this team stands for. So let's go ahead and rebuff Dawn Wind here. We're going to need that. He's going to be good with that. Yep, we're good there because, well, we're good there for what? 4 more turns? Something like that. Oh, no, that's right. We're not rebuffing hers. So this one, we're good for 2 more turns. So this is, his is 2 turns too. So technically turn 8, we're going to rebuff those. In fact, you know what? I'm not going to. I'm just going to stay with the AoE. Let's go. Let's go. The rebuffing of the extra damage would be nice, but it's really only going to apply to turn 9. And come turn 9, we're going to do a quad SA, which they wouldn't get an extra attack on anyway. So in theory, we would hope that turn 9 would be the last turn. Spoiler alert, I kind of don't think it's going to be. But let's find out nonetheless. Okay? So we're going to go back to doing Blowing Wind. Everybody else is going to do their skill too. And we're just going to move on until we get that quad SA. Now, once again, I want to compare this fairly. We have a 35% AoE debuff and 3 AoE DPSs. On the water team, we have a 20% AoE debuff, 20% single target debuff, and 2 AoE DPSs with a single target DPS. And to be fair, that AoE DPS is kind of insane, but it is what it is. This is what makes these tests. So let's keep going. Oof, Haruhime, don't get killed, girl. There we go. I already do not like the amount of damage that the team is taking. That already leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I don't know if the water team would take that much damage. All right, so we're going to do a quad essay. We're going to do an essay with Haruhime. Nothing different there. That's the same scale that they would get otherwise. Because that's the same unit we would use. Welf is going to give all units 100% fire attack damage. That's pretty par of the course. Belle's not going to hit amazing here, but he's going to give everybody water attack damage. Now, Philly Lily, 60% per self strength buff skill. I want you to bear that in mind. The Fire Haruhime would do 40% for 2 skills, and if you buff those right, you would get the full amount. But Aisha does 80%. So Aisha hits already 20% harder, and that's really 40% harder because we do buff on the adventure and the assist side. Lead is going to hit. He's going to get all the buffs. He's going to hit pretty good, but I want to bear in mind here that this would normally be a single target attack. So this is going to be a decent AoE. Not end of the world stuff. It might struggle to break 1 million. Or I'm saying 1 million. 100,000. Yeah, 1 million. You give or take. But it's because 100,000 is nothing. But if I'm honest here, if I'm completely honest with myself here, it's kind of interesting because Lead being an AoE unit where we normally have a single target unit means we should defeat this. Like, this should be in the bag now. We should get some crazy numbers, and this turn 9 should be the last turn. Period. End of discussion. Let's see what she gets. Ooh, 1.2 mil. That was a great hit. And Lead's going to hit 4. Actually, we did beat it. I will admit, in my test run, I had to go 1 more turn. So that was actually fairly impressive. But I want you to bear in mind, we had a 35% AoE debuff. If we had 20%, would it have been the same? And my answer is probably not. But we did pretty well. 18 mil score, not bad at all. That's well within the realm of getting our 15 mil. So all in all, I'm pretty happy. But is this a team I'm going to use every single time? Not really. I'm going to default back to the water team because they're so much easier, and I could default use that for single target or AoE. So just an interesting test that I thought would be fun to run here. Let me know what you guys thought in the comment section down below. Like, comment, share all the good stuff. I got more Danmachi coming at you tomorrow. And we're going to retest the Dark Team. We got to do this with Dark Team too. I think they're another one. I think they might even be better than Fire. Ooh, spoiler alert.